Welcome back to the Facts Verse podcast. I'm your host, Tim Blaine. Today, we're taking a little sidestep from the usual content because joining me is Gary King, author of this book, The Happiness Experiment. Gary is a lifelong entrepreneur, producer, and speaker whose career spans more than 5 decades. Beyond his professional success, he's a former world record powerboat racer, international artist, and global presenter who has reached millions. In recent years, he's focused on a powerful initiative known as the Happiness Experiment, a nationwide movement designed to spark conversations around positivity, character, human behavior. Through his work, along with his speaking and his writing, he continues to inspire people to live with greater integrity, purpose, and happiness. Please welcome Gary King. Hi, Gary. How are you?
I am happy. Thank you for that introduction, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I devoured this book. It is fascinating. It's an easy read in the sense of it kind of makes sense
Correct.
Intuitively, and it also is good. It's an interesting story because it is very much a biography as well as the larger scope of what you're working on with the Happiness Experiment. I guess maybe let's first tell us about the Happiness Experiment and all the signs.
So the number one question I'm asked, I'm in public 7 days a week, and I'm interviewed a lot, and the Happiness Experiment movie, which was filmed over 3 years, just showed recently at the Sunscreen Film Festival here. So the number one question I'm asked is, why do you call it the Happiness Experiment? I go, well, basically after 40 years of studying psychology and human behavior and being an international speaker and author since 1993, I have figured out that pretty much 95% of the planet is doing the Happiness Experiment, and they don't know they're doing it. And what that means is the high percentage of the planet doesn't realize that happiness is internal. It is not external. It is not in the external world. But in Western cultures, that's a focus, the pursuit of happiness. Well, the pursuit of happiness tells you you have to chase it. It's somewhere out here. And I can tell you, the short version, I have worked face to face with some of the most famous, richest, most powerful celebrities in the world, and they all have something in common. They're all unhappy and they hide it, which is very interesting because the general public doesn't see that or feel it because it's hidden from the general public. So yeah, the Happiness Experiment, it is not out there. Pleasure is out there. Happiness is in here. That's the experiment.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned that in the book about happiness versus pleasure and how we often obviously confuse the two, and pleasure can certainly bring some happiness, but at their core, they're different things. I'm first struck when you say that about how happiness is internal and not external. The first thought that popped in my head was what a fascinating thing that literally then every human has the capability for it. You don't need to rely on anything. You're built with it.
That's correct. I mean, part of what I've done, and this is recent research, very recent. So if children and adults were taught that it's not a brain, it's a computer, and it's a computer hard drive, all right? And so everything in that hard drive is actually uploaded into there when you're inside your mother, and for the first 7 years of your life, all that data is uploaded. Well, that data then becomes algorithms, which is no different from a smartphone and what the smartphone does when you search a lamp or any other thing, and it just keeps doing it. So when a child is 4 years old and the discipline says, shut up, don't say that, don't touch that, don't do that, eat that, whether you like it or not, that creates an algorithm. And that a child is searching for three things, and then they become adults and they search for the same 3 things: acceptance, approval, and appreciation. And that's what do movie stars do? They search for acceptance, approval, and appreciation. What is everybody doing? Acceptance, approval, and appreciation. That's the driving force in social media: acceptance, approval, and appreciation. That drives the whole thing.
Yeah, and social media has found ways to both monetize and sort of make numbers of that. Your appreciation and your acceptance is how many likes and all that,
Correct.
which is its own set of problems, obviously.
That's
Um,
correct. Yeah. Right.
but what's interesting, and you talk about it in the book, and just now you mentioned about sort of the how early on in our development we're affected by all these things, and obviously the most immediate thing in our environment is our parents and the way we're treated when we're
Right.
young. And you describe your childhood, and I think that there are certainly a lot of people who are going to be watching this and listening to this, can relate to having hard times in childhood in various ways. So it almost feels like for many people, if you're starting out so early with things you have no control over, like the way you're treated, where a lot of us are working sort of trying to play catch up almost with our happiness instead of starting from a neutral ground.
That is 1000% correct. So, I tell people I was born with PTSD, and that throws people for a curve. They go, "How can you be born with PTSD?" And I said, "Well, when my mother was carrying me, my father was a pilot in World War II. So, what emotions was my mother carrying? Beside carrying me, she's carrying fear, anxiety, depression, paranoia. Well, where do those emotions go? Through the USB cable. Oh, the umbilical cord. Where are they going? Into my forming brain. All right. So now in 1945, I'm born breech. They didn't do C sections in 45. I was born breech. I weighed 12 pounds, not
Wow.
5 pounds, 12 pounds.
Oh my
The
gosh.
umbilical cord was wrapped around my throat. I almost died in childbirth. That was trauma. But that was trauma past the normal childbirth trauma. My mother almost died in childbirth. Now, people watching this may notice my voice does not match my age. My voice isn't even close to my age. In let's see, what's today? May. In 30 days, I'll be 81 years old. My voice is
Nice.
not an 81-year-old voice. It isn't. So
No, it has that lightness to it that is, but I will say that, it has a lightness to it because of the journey you've had and
sure.
also the realization of something that you talk about, which is that it is a process. There's no like immediate switch to happiness. There's no one thing, it is a built system that you have to sort of actively engage in and kind of make a decision to, all right, I'm going to be improving my happiness levels. You said a lot of things there, so I want to unpack them. But
Yeah.
I guess you know what? Let's talk about, because you chronicle in the book your path, because you talk about your voice and your where you are now.
Yeah.
One could assume like, oh well, maybe this is somebody who was born into privilege, never had a care in his life,
Oh,
and didn't go through anything hard, but it's like, well, no, exactly the opposite.
yeah, it
You've
is the
had
opposite.
you've had a life. You've had all these, and you actually have a number for in your book. You said 36, right? 36
That is
traumas,
correct.
36 bigger traumas, which is that's incredible. Can you talk to us about maybe talk about some of these traumas,
Sure.
how they affected you, and sort of where you started out before moving on to this process?
Okay, so when I started my life as a young child of 4 or 5 years old, in the movie, people notice my handshake. It's very noticeable in the movie. Okay. And a lot of times people go, "Do you have Parkinson's disease?" No, I don't. Are you an alcoholic? No, I'm not. My hands shake because when I was 4 years old, I was abused. And if you abuse like an animal, it will shake. Well, I started shaking when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I still do to this day. I've shook like that my whole life. So the interesting thing about the whole dynamic of growing up, unfortunately, the school systems, as a general statement, school systems don't teach emotional and mental health. And what's more important in a human life than emotional and mental health? Nothing. There isn't anything more important than that. So, some of my traumas when I was when I was about 14 years old, I suffered. I couldn't use my hands. I suffered from arthritis, like really bad, which it would be very strange for a 14-year-old. Then, when I was 17 years old, I was in a home invasion. Five guys broke into a house, beat me till I was unconscious, and then kicked me in the head for a long time after I was unconscious, and I wound up with brain damage. There was blood everywhere. Um, then, at one point in the 80s, I was traveling down a very busy road here in St. Petersburg, First Avenue South. It was 4 lanes in one direction, average speed 45 miles an hour, and a mother and 3 children turned loose of her children, told them to run, and I hit her 4-year-old son and killed him instantly. I was not charged. I wasn't ticketed or anything. I was in a restaurant. I collapsed, took 8 paramedics to save my life. My best friend was murdered on my birthday. Um, I wound up with a disease called RSD. I was in a local hospital for 2 weeks and almost died there. I had to learn to walk again when I was 37 years old. I lost the use of my left leg. It took 6 months to learn to walk again. So that's a few of them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the worst one of all, I was in San Diego speaking at UCSD, University of California, San Diego. And then I had to fly from there to Australia to speak in Australia. So I flew from San Diego to Dallas to catch my international flight. I'm boarding the plane. I call my son, Jason. I go, Jay, I'm boarding the plane right now. I will call you when I land in Australia. I love you, Jay. I love you, Dad. That's the last words I ever heard from my son. I got to Australia. My nephew called me to tell me he had jumped off the Sunshine Skyway and killed himself.
Mm.
So, no parent, no anybody should go through um, a suicide of a family member or anybody else for that matter, because it's one of those things that the percentage of people that repeat that as parents is, the last time I checked, it was 25 to 30%.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a few of the traumas, and people go, how in the world did you ever get where you are now? How can you say you're happy? Because I figured out the PTSD mystery. And I went public on ABC in January. I was on ABC Live, and I went public and I said, as of June 13th, 2022, I figured out how to completely reverse PTSD, heal it, and I can teach it in 3 hours. And I said that on ABC in January. And yes, I figured it out. I don't have PTSD anymore.
That's
I don't have
amazing.
any remnants of it. And I had it my
And
whole life.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you talk about having, I had not heard of PTSD, which is this idea of just
Right.
chronic,
Yeah.
lifelong,
Complex just
or
means
complex. Sorry, yeah.
that rather than having one horrific trauma, you have a whole series of them. So it compounds, which is what the word complex means. It just means you've
Yeah.
had a compound series of horrific traumas. And I went through, a divorce and went broke and all that stuff. But those were not any of the traumas. It was,
That stuff feels mild after the real traumas.
yeah.
Yeah. So then you declared that you had discovered this, way to reverse PTSD
Mhm.
and this formula for it, which, I do want to walk through the actual formula for it. But tell us how then you went to discover that. Like, how did you get from the point where you're just going through all these traumas, you have all this PTSD from these incredibly horrible things, to, oh my gosh, I figured it out?
Okay. So the first thing I did was I have a 40-year background in human behavior and psychology, but I don't have a college degree. My degree is the shoes that I'm currently wearing. That's my degree, because it would be almost impossible for a psychologist to wear these shoes. So, uh, what I started doing was I looked at PTSD and I went, well, there's the beginning part right there, because PTSD is an algorithm, post traumatic stress disorder. That's not what it is. That's why it's not reversible, because you can't reverse human stress. There's not a way to do that. I mean, if you're a human being and you have feelings, you're going to feel stress. There's not an escape from stress. Right. So I looked at it and I went, well, it's not PTSD, it's PTTD, post traumatic trigger disorder. It's a trigger, it's an algorithm, it's a human algorithm. Now, I ran this theory through AI. I've run it everywhere. Okay. So, and that is exactly what it is. It's a trigger, it's an algorithm. So, awareness is the key to happiness, being aware. So my book, there's a lot of cryptic in the book, and cryptic just simply means there's hidden meanings that are very powerful in chapters that the subconscious mind picks up the meaning, but the conscious mind doesn't necessarily do that because it's 95.5. The subconscious mind is 95% of human behavior. So I'm going to give you a far out, real, factual example of how powerful this is. I meant to bring it here and have it on the table, but I didn't, but it doesn't matter. I'll describe it. So where I am right now, 20 feet from me, there is the front door and the security system. All right. I live upstairs. All right. So I'm going to go back to when I was 17 years old. I worked in a gas station. I was the mechanic in the daytime. And at night, I pumped gas from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I was there by myself to make extra money. I lived, I don't know, 7 miles away. So 9 o'clock, I lock up, I go home. Across the street's a 24-hour diner, and all the people who leave the bars at night park in the gas station. Okay. I get in bed, and all of a sudden, I'm in trauma. Did I lock the front door? I drive all, because I'm responsible for the money, all the inventory.
Sure.
I drive out there, the door's unlocked, but nothing was missing. So I locked the door. Now that occurrence was 63 years ago. Okay. Now, what I'm about to tell you is the foundation of PTSD. It's the absolute foundation. So 20 feet from where I'm sitting, there is a locked Yale lock sitting next to the door. So when I lock the door at night and I set the security system, I grab the locked Yale lock and I walk upstairs and I set it on the counter. Within 10 seconds, I have to walk back downstairs, even though I carried the lock with me that represents it's locked. I have to walk back downstairs and check it again. I've done that for 63 years. Now, your audience, just think about what I just described. This is real life. A locked Yale lock to overcome what? The algorithm. To overcome the algorithm. So I carry the lock upstairs and I still have to come downstairs. Now, that representation of an algorithm is not negative. That's not trauma. So I'm not traumatized. That's safety. So the algorithm represents safety. But that shows how powerful, if a person is abused in any way, it creates an algorithm. I mean, military people, the sound of a firecracker is the trigger, or many other things, something somebody says. Yeah, it's so once that goes into the human consciousness, you're not triggered ever again. There's no trigger. And I can teach it in 3 hours. And then the person's never triggered again because it becomes part of their awareness. So they understand that there are people that are triggers. So you create boundaries. You don't allow those people in your life anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and you really you talk about some of the more or troublesome romantic relationships you've had and
Well,
personal
oh my,
relationships you've had, and you've had your share,
yeah,
and and that's one of the reasons I think your message resonates so well throughout the book, which is that you're not coming at it from a like, hey, I ran a bunch of experiments, just trust me on this. You're kind of like, well, here's what happened to me, and here's the mistakes I've made, here's
yeah,
the things I've done right and wrong, and here's where I'm at.
that's right.
I think what's interesting is that, and you talk about, emotional and mental health, that's the
Yeah,
baseline of everything. And it just shows you how that runs across all things in your life, whether it's career, whether it's relationships and all those things. And it really just ripples out and you have all these algorithms that affect those. How does it, well, actually, when people talk to you about this, what's the most common thing people want to ask you about? Is it relationships? Is it like just their relationships with parents, or what is it?
yeah. Well, the most common would be relationships and challenges with their family or their children, especially now in this time period. It's become much, much, much worse. So relationships, the interesting thing about relationships, People have said to me, hey, there's typos in your book. Really? Where's a typo? Well, you put a dash in the word relationship. That's not a typo. What do you mean it's not a typo? There's a dash between the word relation and ship. Okay. And then I ask the person, I go, what exactly sunk the Titanic? An iceberg. What part of the iceberg? The part that you can't see, the part that's underneath the water. What sinks relationships? The part that you can't see, the part that a person will not share. And, especially males, men are taught that vulnerability is a weakness. Let me tell you, vulnerability is one of the greatest strengths a human can have, is being vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable, that means you're repressing and suppressing and everything else. And that's going to explode into, in the book, it'll explode into cancer. And that's not me. I didn't discover that. That's Dr. Gabor Mate. That's numerous people that have a full understanding that your emotions control your physical health. So, relationships, people choose. I mean, oh my, in the book, what did I do? Well, I had the please disease. Oh boy, you get the please disease, you're in trouble. If you walk through your life trying to please people, there's not going to be anything left of you at some point.
It's wild. I mean, and I think a lot of people, myself included, and my wife and I talk about this all the time. Of it's just that pleases. It's just like, man, it at some level it must reward certain pathways when you please. When you act as a pleaser, then it like triggers all the dopamine or the serotonin, which goes like, yeah, I'm doing good. Like they like me.
Yeah.
But so that's to me, that's one of the hardest things to kick to, or at least work on, because then you have to sit in a little bit of being uncomfortable.
It goes back to what I was saying about childhood, acceptance, approval, and appreciation. So, why does a person go out into the world and look for a romantic relationship? Why do people do that? Well, they do it because they want to get the emotional feeling of acceptance, approval, and appreciation from another person. Another way to put it is they want to experience what's termed unconditional love, but in a very high percentage of relationships, it isn't unconditional love, it's conditional love. I did an experiment at a local college. I won't name the college, but I did an experiment. It was the end of last year. I was doing a presentation there. And because my presentations are extemporaneous, I don't study or have notes or a teleprompter. The audience was 50% male, female, 35 to 75 years old. And so I asked them an off the cuff question I'd never asked an audience before. So I'm going to ask you a question. I just ask that you immediately respond and you don't process the question. So here's the question. Raise your hand if you unconditionally love yourself. All right. I already knew what was going to happen in the room. Okay. And here is what happened. The room was full and two people did this. They struggled to get their hand to about here, and one person did this. Nobody raised their hand. And I tried it again and the same thing happened. Now, what I didn't ask, and your audience can ask themselves this question, okay? What I didn't ask was, I'd like a lady and a gentleman to stand and tell me specifically why you don't unconditionally love yourself and you don't even hesitate and you just go like that. Why? Well, I know the answer to that, but I wanted to ask the audience because it was being recorded. It goes back to childhood is where it goes. I mean, children are trying to be unconditionally loved, but what really happens is they're conditionally loved. That's the feeling that they get, because if they touch something, they're scolded. So here's another really interesting one, and this is the test I've been doing the last 3 months. So I'll say to an audience, okay, raise your hand. You're 4 months old and you're crying. You're really, really, really upset. You're crying. Well, if you could talk at 4 months old, what would you say to your caregiver, your parent, if you could talk? And people go, well, I'd say, give me a hug. Uh-huh. What else would you say? Give me the bottle with the milk in it. Uh-huh. What else would you say? Give me my teddy bear. What are those things called? Pacifiers. Distractions. That's what they're called. Okay. So now you're 4 years old and you can talk. What are you asking for? Pacifiers. I need a cookie. I need a bicycle. I need a new toy. I need to go to Disney World. Well, that is an algorithm and it keeps going forward and forward. And oh, yeah, doing what I did, working in the personal development industry for 25 years and being around all these celebrities and watching them because of my background. And I go, they're running 1,000 miles an hour to buy another jet or buy another house. And the whole time they're doing it, they have no idea they're chasing after happiness. And the faster they run, the farther they're getting away from it. That's the interesting part. They get
Yeah.
farther away.
And when it comes to relationships, I mean, is it your sense that the first step is to, if you're in a relationship or you're seeking one out, to kind of be aware of the level to which this person is giving you unconditional love,
Correct.
and then if you sense that it's not really there, either is it like then get out? It's never going to work. This person is not someone who can give that for you, or is that like you work through that and kind of be open about it?
Well, see, that goes back to the so why is it called emotional intimacy? Into me see. That's what that means. Most people do not want another person to look inside them because looking inside them goes back through how many relationships or how many marriages and who cheated and who lied and who did all these things. And of course, if you check, I do statistics, a lot of statistics. The last time I checked, having affairs, 43% of women, 63% of men. Well, gee, my next book is called The Why. Okay. Because people are focusing on what is happening and they're ignoring the why. Well, the why is where the solution is. The what is where the problem is. If you don't look at the why, I mean, anybody that has an affair, they know exactly why they're having an affair. It's not a mystery. They know
Mm,
why. They know
yeah.
why they're doing it. Okay. They're chasing after pleasure. They're chasing after acceptance, approval, appreciation, physical contact, the same thing that went on when they were 4 months old. But that's an awareness thing. So it's really fascinating. But here's the really interesting part. About 3 months ago, there was a study done. A group decided to study 1,000 people that were at the end of their life naturally. So they didn't have Alzheimer's or dementia or anything like that. They weren't suffering. They were just at the end of their life. So they were asked this question: what are your top 3 regrets? You're at the end of your life. All 1,000 people had the same top 3 regrets. And here they are. I didn't unconditionally love myself and I didn't let other people unconditionally love me. I didn't have a life purpose and I never lived in the now. Now, just think about that for a minute. I never unconditionally loved myself. I never let other people unconditionally love me. I never had a life purpose and I never lived in the now. Huh. And 1,000 people had that. Well, that kind of means that 100,000 people would have that
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's a baseline. So it's really fascinating to go down that path, which takes me to the original form. I created the formula years ago. It's on the front cover of my first book.
Yeah, I was gonna say we got it. Can't go too long
Oh
without actually
yeah.
saying what this formula is, please.
So the fascinating part about this formula, when I created it, I went, I'm going to experiment with the formula. So I took the formula and I put it in the context of the periodic table, like H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. So I put it in that format. And so the formula was F2HT2SW equals HF to the power of 10, means it compounds. All right. So I had a bunch of hats made and I had that embroidered and I wore them all over the world. And I wanted to see if it was gender specific or demographic specific as to who asked me what it meant. And it
Yeah.
wasn't. So it didn't matter whether it was a cashier in a grocery store or a student in a college or an entrepreneur in Australia. They all asked me, what does that mean? All right. The interesting part is, and to this day, I still do it. I show people the formula and I go, all right, if this is the formula for happiness and the first letter, like the periodic table, is F2, what does the F stand for?
Hmm.
In 30 years, nobody has ever told me what the F stands
You're
for.
kidding. Wow.
No.
Okay. All right.
And they come up with fun, faith, all these things. No,
Sure.
the S stands for forgiveness. And the two means you have to forgive yourself and other people. And if you don't do that, happiness is literally impossible. You can have lots of pleasure, lots and lots and lots of pleasure, but you can't have happiness because you have to be able to forgive yourself and other people. The interesting thing, without going down that path, because I don't go down that path, is currently hate completely destroys the hater and does nothing to the hated. Nothing at all. Nothing. Zero. So
Yeah.
forgiveness. So, all right. The HT2, you must be honest with yourself and truthful with other people. No exception to that rule. No exception. No white lies. No avoiding accountability. You play that game and you're going to get caught. The law of cause and effect is going to catch you. The SW is self worth. And if you don't have healthy self worth, you're not going to forgive yourself and you're not going to be honest. And the HF is happiness and fulfillment to the power of 10 because it compounds on itself. It exponentially compounds, which is that's how I live my life. And every
Yeah.
day it compounds. But you see why just the simple things I've shared with you so far, a person takes this in and a life changes dramatically by doing this. I mean, this is 40 years of research to do this,
Yeah.
you know?
And I like at the end of the book, it's not just sort of like, here's a formula, now go have fun. You actually, there's, you sort of walk us through like, okay, here's how you actually try to implement this in your life.
That's
And
right.
it's a process. And it's which is another reason people should get this book. And in addition to it being an interesting read and, an important topic, it's also, that it also puts the help and self-help and, there's ways
Well,
to really work on yourself.
it's also based on science. So
Yeah.
first of all, so on November 7th, 2019, I had 10 of these made. Okay. The second one, I drilled some holes in it and I bolted it to a St. Petersburg city limit sign. I bolted it right on the sign. I took a picture of it and put it on I Love St. Pete, which is at the time had 72,000 people. Now I think it's got 300,000 people. All right. Why did I do this? I was suffering profusely in 2019. And I thought, okay, in all my studies, if I handle the word happiness and I look at it all the time, my subconscious mind is going to grab hold of it and it won't let it go. And that's what I did. Well, I start putting these up and it goes on social media. And so I'll bring it up to date. So in the movie that played Friday night at AMC and it played Sunday at a big museum downtown, there is a young girl in that movie. Her name is Delaney. She was 26 years old at the time. So Delaney worked at a Barnes and Noble here locally. She just didn't want to go forward anymore. So she made a plan. I'm going to drive to the bridge. I'm going to throw my car in park. I'm going to run to the fence. I'm going to jump. Well, on the way, she saw one of these on an oak tree. She turned around and went home. She's in the movie. So just seeing that word, it's subliminal. It's the same thing Disney and all these product companies and NASCAR, they're all doing subliminal. You know? So she saw it and she turned around and went home. And so in the movie, she's standing at the tree that it was on and she said, "This happiness sign saved my life. Gary King saved my life." Well, Gary King didn't save her life. The word happiness saved her life, but I happened to be the one who bought the sign and put it there. So
Right.
as of, Saturday, there are now 792 of these in St. Petersburg and Gulfport. There are 2,000 of them that have been purchased, and they're all over the world. They're in Malaysia, Singapore, Scotland, They're everywhere. And in the movie, they were in 9 states. Now I think they're almost in every state now,
Yeah.
in all 50 states. I know they're in Hawaii. So,
And it's such a wild thing that, something as seemingly small as just, for you
yeah.
putting this sign up that says one word, happiness, and then for others, the action of just either actively noticing it or just kind of like,
Well,
noticing it, has such a huge effect.
I've given out 21,000 of these stickers. 21,000. They're every place. They're on car bumpers. People quit 20 years ago putting bumper stickers on cars. Now, these things are on cars all over the United States. They're on the back window, they're on the back bumper, they're on the front windshield, they're all over the place.
Yeah, and therefore compounding the effects of it,
That's
hopefully.
correct.
And as more people are, hopefully not driving and looking at their cell phone, hopefully they're at least seeing the bumper ahead of them with the happiness on it.
I
Um,
have a version of the sticker that goes on the back of a smartphone.
oh,
And
there you go.
here's one. I tell people, if you take one of these stickers and you put it on on your bathroom mirror, within 2 weeks to 30 days, your whole life will change and you won't know why it's changed. Just because you're looking in your mirror and that's what you're staring at. You're seeing the world. Well, that's an algorithm that goes into your brain. Because
Yeah,
once people understand how their brain actually works, they can work it. So in the book, I talk about Goldie Hawn and Mind Up. What there's 400,000 children in Mind Up, either 40,000 or 400,000 being taught Mind Up. So 5 and 6 year olds are taught how their computer works. Once you're taught how
yeah.
your computer works, you can work it.
Well, it's interesting because I think all of this feels very much in the now. It feels like this kind of thinking is at least gaining momentum, and this notion, and even though I see it sometimes, like as I'm sitting there scrolling on my Instagram feed, but at least for me, I find that Instagram algorithm rewards me by sending me more people who are also spreading this kind of message, which is like, okay, well, that's not the worst thing in the world. Um, but it seems like there is more of an awareness of awareness and more of an awareness of how powerful the mind is and all these things. Have you felt a groundswell of like people kind of tapping into the stuff that you're talking about?
Well, in what I do, yeah, because I there's some open markets here, where I have a tent and thousands of people come like on a Sunday. I'm usually at one of the local Sunday markets here. And the reason I do that, it's not really about selling things, even though I have a clothing line, I have the books, I have the signs, I have the stickers, I have keychains, I have all kinds of things. What that does is it facilitates people coming up to me who have lost somebody. That's what it facilitates. So a lot of people come because they know I'm there and they want to talk to me about their trauma or their friend's trauma. And that's how I facilitate it. So, this is, again, it's 40 years of research. I mean, I've read 2,300 nonfiction books. People go, What? How do you read 2,300 nonfiction books?" And I do probably 2 to 4 hours of research 7 days a week. Um,
Wow.
because for me to get where I am now, I mean, at my age, Channel 10 just filmed me um, on Saturday. And the news anchor was just here. He was picking up a lot of pictures of my son because they're doing a special on 4th of July that goes to 200 TV stations. They're doing a special on me. And he was telling me, he was reiterating how I was on the top of a ladder in downtown St. Petersburg with my right leg wrapped around a light pole, putting a happiness sign on the pole, and they were filming me from behind me, and I knew they were a nervous wreck because he said, "We thought you were gonna fall off." It was next to the road, the cars were going by. He said, "We were sure you were gonna fall off into the traffic. We were absolutely positive you'd fall off the ladder." And I go, "No, I've done this now for 7 years. My ladders are special. They can't slide off of a pole." But yeah, they were having a nervous breakdown. So
And it reminds me of you talk about your every day you're doing research, and every day you're continuing this process. And you have this quote in your book that's like, Every day in every way I'm getting better," which
Oh,
is it. Which, first of all, is great, and it blew my mind because literally my grandfather used to say that to me. And he must have read the same source material that this was probably 30 years ago, and he would say it, and it stuck with me, just like something he would say, and he would say, like, "Say that to yourself every day." And I was
that
like, "Oh
was
my gosh."
that was created in 1920 by Emile Couvet. I can't remember the title of the book. The way they teach it, I don't have to do this anymore. The way they teach it. So everybody that's watching this, go buy some clothesline twine, not string or rope, clothesline twine. Okay. Tie a knot in it every inch and a half. So tie 20 knots an inch and a half apart and throw it on your bed. All right. When you go to bed at night, right before you close your eyes, you grab the first knot and you say out loud, day by day, in every way, I'm getting better, better, and better. Then you go to the second knot and you say it again. You say it 20 times. The only reason for the knots is so you don't have to try and memorize where you are as
Yeah,
you
keep
go.
track, yeah.
Okay. I don't have to do the knots anymore because it's automatic. And so you do it right before you close your eyes. And as soon as your eyes open in the morning, you grab it again and you do it again. If you do that, you will be shocked at what happens in your life. You will literally be shocked. Um, you would get to the point by doing that where a combination of this word and doing that, you couldn't catch a cold. If you were in a room with 100 people that had a cold, you wouldn't get it, because our emotions are controlling our health. I mean, how in the world the news anchors that film me all the time, they are in shock that I'm climbing a 20-foot ladder. You're almost 81 years old, you're climbing a 20-foot ladder, and you're
Yeah,
hooking your leg around a pole and leaning back? Yeah,
wow.
they think I'm crazy.
Well, I will say this, and now that you just made me think that, and my grandfather, who was the one who I assume he was saying this to himself every day, like he was, playing tennis in his 80s. And that always stuck with me, and that was, not even now. That was many years ago. So it
Yeah,
was like, all right, well, he was on to something.
yeah,
So I guess then you talk about all the components of the formula. We have, forgiveness of yourself and
yeah.
other people, and then we have of self worth, and we have honesty and truthfulness. These and those obviously really overlap. As you get going, because they're so interrelated. If someone wants to, obviously. You have already said start with, just putting happiness up around you somewhere, and then
Correct.
doing that 20 times affirmation, those kinds of things. But if someone wants to jump into this, what's their best, first course of action to try to like reach this, formula of happiness?
Okay. So the whole starting point is based on awareness. Okay. So there is a thing called the circle and the ant, right? Your audience can look that up, the circle and the ant. And it's a teaching process where if you take a piece of paper and you draw a circle on it, you put a live ant in the middle of the circle, and you do this with a black marker, the ant won't cross the circle. Keeps running around. Finally, after a couple hours, it crosses the circle. You reduce the circle. Okay. What is that process teaching? That process teaches a person to live by perspective and not perception. N- Here's a statistic: 98% of the population of the earth lives their life by perception. Only 2% lives by perspective. So perception means everything that happens out here is about the person. It's what they didn't say. It's what they did say. It's what I didn't get. It's what I did get. That's perception. Perspective is you're looking at your life from a distance and you're watching. See, in my life, the only way the outside world can affect me is if I let it. So no person rejecting me can affect me unless I allow it. Nothing that happens on a global scale, on a national scale, on a local scale. None of that can affect me unless I give it permission. That's perception. So it
Yeah.
gives a person a choice. That's called awareness. You're aware. Well, when you're aware, you cannot wind up in a position. You have to choose a position of hate or bias or I need this, and if I don't get this, then I'm not going to be happy, or I need a new something, or it's yeah. Um, it it's interesting, but based on my life and my age, and it's good. I mean, I don't have any effects of PTSD or complex PTSD. I don't have any of it at all. And that's kind of unusual. Here's another statistic. Males in the United States that have crossed the age of 55, the average male in the United States is on 7 pharmaceuticals after
Hmm.
55 years old. 7 pharmaceuticals. I have The only issue I have is I have neuropathy in my feet, and that's because I, walked on hot coals over 500 times. That's why I have
Okay, well,
neuropathy
that's
in my
slightly self-inflicted.
in my
Um,
feet. Yeah, that's
yeah,
almost
what are you gonna do?
yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. And oh man, before you said that, I had it triggered a question, but it has lost me. But I will circle back. So something you said early on
Yeah.
about people's regrets and not living in the now.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the inherent challenges though, because like, I feel like most people who maybe have tried to do that at some point and whatever, and it's because we have a perception of the future and the past and as well as the present, it's very hard for our brains not to think about those both or be affected by both in certain ways.
So
Um, it really feels like it's when I try to do like, okay, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be in the moment. I feel like sometimes I'm just like fighting against just an ocean of waves crashing on me that are like my brain wanting to go back and forward. Do you find that, or does that ease up?
that is absolutely correct because that's the way the brain works. The brain works so I obviously, you've read the book, so you know toward the end of the book, I discussed having an NDE. Most people do not. A few people know what that means. 5 million people in the United States have had NDEs. NDE means near death experience. So in 1987, I was clinically dead. All right. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't any of that. I was clinically dead. It's an interesting experience. Well, when you
Hmm.
have that kind of experience, it helps a person disseminate between what's real and what's not real. Meaning, if a person wants to chase after another person to get loved, well, that will never work because in order to feel real love, you have to unconditionally love yourself. And unfortunately, that's not taught in schools and colleges as a general statement. But when you value yourself, and that, living in, I worked in the schools in Myanmar, which when I was there, it was a third world country. They were not westernized. They're westernized now. So $300 sneakers had no place in Myanmar. It's no place
Sure,
there.
sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I can do what I'm doing right now. I can do 8 hours straight without stopping. I can share information for. I can do it a lot longer than that, but I can do 8 hours really easy. So, there's exploring human emotions and human behavior is really fascinating. The average person doesn't do that. I mean, statistically, in the United States, actually in the world, 86% of all books read are read by women, not by men.
Hmm.
The average man, most of them don't read books. I mean, when I sell books at the market, most of the people that buy books are women, not men.
It also speaks to what you talked about earlier was this, the unwillingness or just inability of often men to access things like vulnerability and
Yeah,
awareness and emotions, and we're taught not to.
correct.
I do see that surely but slowly, or the other way around. That is becoming a thing that gets at least talked about, and at least there are people who are trying to be aware of that and open up and be more vulnerable. But I think it's hard for a lot of people. Period. I think it's hard for men. Um, but I think it's first, as you say, the first step is awareness, and just like being aware that you are not necessarily where you could be emotionally.
See, just take honesty as an example. All right. People really, the average person really struggles with being honest. I mean, the statistics on lying on planet Earth are staggering. Something like the average person lies um, 10 times per 3 minutes. That's the average person. Now, to qualify that statement, a lie is withholding the truth. So if you're asked something and you withhold it, that's a lie. An auto response, somebody says, and lots of people auto respond because they don't even think about, they just auto respond,
Sure.
they lie. Well, that my first presentation in 93 was called The Power of Truth. I did that in Australia. And I mean, I grew up an average life, until I went through all this, my life was average. I told lies all the time, you know. I had
Yeah.
3 affairs, it's in the book, and I know exactly why I had them too.
Right. Um, you also, I mean, we talk about while you can't control the external, obviously, you can only control how the level to which it affects you. Um, I think a lot of it seems like, is training your brain. Like, there's a million places you could be putting your focus in any given
That's right.
minute or hour or whatever. So it's not necessarily like, and that's such a subtle shift. It's just like, what you focus on will really then affect the way you interpret things and the way you feel and the way you feel about yourself.
Yeah,
So that's where I guess awareness comes in, of just, yes, there's bad stuff going on near you, around the world,
correct.
etc. And not that we need to advocate like being, putting your head in the sand and ignoring realities.
No,
But if the more you focus on the type of things you're talking about, at least you'll be more well equipped to handle it.
it all goes back to that same thing again. It goes back to being aware. So the external world is going through a metamorphosis right now. I mean, my parents moved here in 1952. St. Petersburg doesn't look anything like it did in 1952, and life is very different now, and it's going to get even more different. Okay, because change is inevitable, and the average person doesn't like change. So consider this: the average person works their whole life to get into what's called the comfort zone. Okay, they want to be comfortable, especially like a lot of people will work their whole life just to retire. So they'll work really hard to get to this place called retirement so they can be comfortable. Well, the problem is there's no comfort zone. There never was. There's only 2 zones: decay and growth. So if you're not growing, you're decaying because there's no place in the middle. That's why you see what you see today worldwide with behavior. That's called decay. So years ago, I tried an experiment. I did it in Las Vegas. I've done it all over the world. So I tried an experiment, and it was based on picking up litter. So when I was in Vegas speaking at the Venetian, I came down before the event started, and I took 5 pieces of paper, wadded them up in a ball, and it was about the size of almost the size of a bowling ball. And there were vendors outside the convention center. And I set this ball of paper. I was in a suit and I set this ball of paper in front of the door. And the vendors are going, "What are you doing?" And I go, "You're going to be shocked at what you're about to see." Right. So here comes the participants. All right. So 500 people are stepping over the ball of paper, walking around the ball of paper, or kicking the ball of paper. They all walk in the room. Nobody picked it up. That's why I told the vendors, "You're going to be shocked," because it was obnoxious and this place is spotless. All right. So now everybody's in the room and a woman comes out and picks up the piece of paper as an afterthought. So she didn't know who I was. She didn't know I was a speaker. She probably thought I worked for the hotel. And I said, here, I'll take that from you. So I grab it. All right. So now I'm introduced. I go in, I get on stage, and I got the ball of paper in my hand. And I go, all right, I watched you all enter the room. You walked over the paper, you looked at it, you walked around it, you kicked it. Now I want you to raise your hand and tell me why you did that. So people are going, I didn't put it there. It was dirty. It's not my responsibility, all that stuff. So it was a while back. So I'm going to make up a name. Sarah, are you out there in the audience somewhere? Raise your hand. Come up here. So I've got the ball of paper in my hand. She walks up to the stage. I open it up. I take out the center piece of paper, and it's got a dollar sign and 50 next to the dollar sign. I reach in my top pocket and I hand her a $50 bill. This is hypnosis. This is based on hypnosis. I use hypnosis on my audiences, but I tell them, okay? And so then I said, for the rest of your life, you will be compelled, and I put a lot of emphasis on it, and I did it 3 times. All right. People they email me from all over the world and they go, you did it to me. I'm walking around London picking up trash because that's an embedded command. All right. Embedded commands control human life. I did a presentation last year here locally, and there were 250 people in the audience. And I said, listen, I'm going to hypnotize you. It's going to take me 90 seconds and it's going to get everybody in the room. And I don't care if you think you can't be hypnotized, it's going to get you anyway. So then I took 90 seconds and I did something and I got them all 250 people in 90 seconds. If you study the way the human brain works, you understand that every day of your life, if you're watching TV, you're getting hypnotized. If you have one of, let's see, my cell phone, it's very sophisticated, very sophisticated. It came from Star Trek. It's very complicated. Okay.
Right.
People go, you carry a flip phone? Uh-huh. I have a background in security. You have a background in security. Yeah, you don't typically carry a smartphone. You carry a flip phone because it can't be tracked and you can't copy it and you can't do all this other stuff.
Right.
So, we're at for a set of circumstances, and it was all very smartphones were calculated. That was a very calculated thing, okay, as to what could be done to a person's personality, their behavior patterns. It was very thought out. It was very thought through.
Yeah.
These cost $22.37.
Yeah. Right.
So
It's a good deal.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. We're running out of time here. I wanted to sort of first off, the movie that you mentioned that it was released, is it going to be available for people to find online, in person? Where can they look at it?
Here's what's going to happen. And I had to have 2 attorneys to make this happen. And without going into the long story about the person that filmed me and the way that they should have done it and the way that they didn't do it. Okay. So as of Friday, all right, my name is at the end of the movie with a copyright, which means I have the right to do whatever I want with the movie. Okay. So currently here locally, I'm going to start showing it free in a local movie theater. Nobody's going to pay to see this movie. All right.
Wow.
And when I show it, it's going to have it's going to have a presentation connected to it and a Q&A connected to it. All right. Now, this also means that I can link it to your podcast. I can do that. I'm waiting right now for my copyright acknowledgement to be edited into the end of the movie.
The actual movie.
Okay?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I can do that because the whole idea is the effect in the movie, the effect of seeing the movie changes people's lives. So now that I have rights, which I haven't had for 3 years, now that I have rights, yes, I can present the movie I can put it on YouTube, I can put it on Facebook, I can give you a link, you can put it in the podcast.
Great.
Absolutely. So
Love it.
that's where that's going. The other
Okay.
part is the big thing is the sign. People want the signs. They want them
Yeah,
all over.
yeah.
They want them all over the world. So I'm working right now to get them on Amazon so they're available in other countries. Currently in the United States, if anybody goes on to thehappinessexperiment.com, there's a shopping cart on there. So these are available on there. They can be shipped anywhere in the United States. Packages of stickers are on there. Um, the clothing line, the hats, all of it is on the shopping cart. Now, why am I doing that? I'm doing that because the more people that display the word happiness, it's going to change people's behavior. Am I trying to make millions of dollars? No, I am not. I'm trying to save lives and get people on the path of happiness instead of going through horrible divorces and being abused and allowing abuse and all that stuff. That needs to stop. And I'm not stopping until I'm going to stay till I'm 120 years old. So there you have it.
There you go. I love it. And people can, and things like this book and the other books you've written,
Yeah.
also available at, where people get books, or, or
Yeah,
also just on your
the book
site.
is on Amazon,
Yeah.
and if you order it on Amazon and you live in the United States, chances are you'll get it the next day.
Yeah.
If you're in a foreign country, you can get it in any foreign country. You can get it in Australia or the UK. So
Awesome.
soon the signs will be on Amazon so that they're available in Australia and the UK and all over the place.
And hopefully soon the signs will be on a pole near you,
That
whoever's
is
watching this.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, do your part, get the sign and put it up,
Yeah.
and watch it ripple out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary, so much for being here. This is
Now it
so
is.
cool. I hope people get a lot out of this, and then also continue to engage with you and the
And
signs and the movie
people
and
can
everything.
contact me personally. I don't hide my personal details. My personal email is KYNGME, the number 2 at AOL.com. And my cell phone number is 727-692-9909. The only way I can help people is if they can find me. I don't
Yeah.
hide my identity.
Well, now they know you're not going to be speaking through a smartphone. It's a standard flip phone, and
Well, and texting, yeah, you can send me a text, but the chance of getting one back,
yeah,
texting
right. You gotta.
on a flip phone,
That's right.
not
Those
a
are
simple
hard.
thing.
That's right.
Oh,
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. Really
oh, it was
appreciate it.
my
This
honor,
is
my
a
pleasure.
delight. Thank you.